Hello and happy Health Writing Wednesday. We are back, and I'm so excited that you're here watching today or catching this on the replay. Let's face it, if you are a freelancer or a self employed service provider of any kind, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have to do a whole lot of proactive outreach. Prospective clients would be coming to you to seek your services, to seek your expertise. You could just like sit back and let the new leads roll in, pick and choose who you want to work with, be really selective because you just have so many leads coming in that you have the luxury, the privilege of being able to be selective about who you work with. You could just provide the service and you could collect your check. In reality, as you know, if you are a freelancer or a service provider, I don't work like that. That is not oftentimes the reality, particularly for new freelancers. Um, at one thing that I tell my students as they're getting to the point where they're starting to think about outreach is that build it and they will come does not apply to you as a new freelancer because if nobody knows what you're building, if nobody knows about the services that you offer, if nobody knows about the value that you can deliver to their company, they're not going to reach out to you to provide that service because they just don't know. So when people ask me, well, how do I get clients or prospects to come to me rather than me having to go out to them? I always ask in response, what have you done to build up your skills, to build up your credibility, to build up your authority, to build up your profile in a way that would warrant and invite people to come to you for those health content writing services? So we're going to dive deeper into that today in this Health Writing Wednesday. Before we do, if this is your first time tuning in to one of my Wednesday videos, my name is Megan Freeland. I am a public health pharmacist by training, but all of my career has been in medical writing and health communications. I've been a medical writer for more than 14 years at this point, and started my health content marketing company, Stock Rose Creative, back in 2016. I also run the Health Professionals to Health Writers Accelerator Program, which is a 6-month accelerator that teaches fellow pharmacists and other healthcare providers how to replace a portion of their income through freelance health content writing. So every Wednesday, I do these Health Writing Wednesday videos because I like to talk specifically about health content writing as opposed to the many other types of medical writing that exist. So today we are going to dive deeper into the answer of how you get clients to come to you. The short answer, I will just share that up front, is that you have to lay the groundwork. You have to lay the foundation. You cannot skip the steps of laying the foundation. So what do I mean by laying the foundation, laying the groundwork? First, learning about health content writing, but not just health content writing itself. You have to learn about health content writing in the larger context of marketing. So, health content writing is a type of medical writing, yes. However, it is a part of a larger area known as health content marketing. And in the marketing process, there are lots of different steps. Writing is just one of those steps. The creation of the content is just one of the steps in the larger health content marketing process. And so one thing that's really important to understand is how health content writing fits into the larger process of health content marketing. It's also helpful to understand how health content marketing fits into the larger scope of digital marketing because there are lots of types of marketing, digital marketing methodologies out there that your prospects and your clients are going to be experimenting with and using. And in order to be an expert, in order to be a thought partner and not just like a service provider that is executing a task, in order to show your expertise and your authority in this space, it's important that you be able to understand how what you do fits into the larger scope of the company's marketing efforts. So that's a really important part of laying the foundation. Another important part of laying the foundation, in my personal opinion, and you'll hear other people who disagree. I used to be one of the people who disagreed, but in my personal opinion, Another really important part of laying the foundation is establishing a niche and specializing in that niche area. Now, when we talk about having a niche or a specialty area as a writer, I'm of the belief that the primary benefit of having a niche is the positioning, how you're positioning yourself in the market. Um, when you're able to tell someone specifically, I write blog posts about, I write blog posts for digital health companies. That is much more specific and memorable and conveys a certain amount of authority and expertise more than saying, I write health blog posts. I write blog posts for any health company. You're positioning yourself as a specialist as opposed to a generalist. Now, this doesn't mean that you can never write for a company that's not a digital health company. It just means that the way you are positioning yourself externally and publicly is more narrow so that you are owning or building your ownership in a particular space in the market, so that you stand out in someone's mind as occupying that particular space. Behind the scenes, maybe you're doing, maybe you're doing other stuff. Maybe you're writing for a supplement company. I don't know, whatever it is. That's fine. Your niche doesn't have to hold you back or restrict you or constrict you, but it should help you name and own a lane in the market externally and publicly. So my opinion is that a part of laying your groundwork and laying your foundation is making it known what your niche specialty area is, by having a specific niche and building up your expertise in that area. Another important piece, and I'm looking at my notes because I have so much stuff here that if I don't, I'm going to forget. Another really important part of laying the foundation is practicing, doing the actual writing. If your goal is to be a health content writer who has clients coming to them, it means that you have to be a really good health content writer. And the only way to be really good and to get better and to progress is to practice and to write. You can do all the learning in the world, you can do all the niche selection in the world. But if you don't actually practice the skill of writing and improve over time and have a body of work that you can be proud of, that you're proud to share your samples, you're proud to share your work, why would a prospect proactively reach out to you for your services if your services are not a great reflection of what you have the capacity to do as a writer? It's really, really important to have a strong body of work. And this conversation is not about AI. However, I will say that a part of the reason why I only work with healthcare providers who aspire to be health content writers and not just anyone who aspires to be a freelance health content writer is because, one, I'm a healthcare provider, so my experience is more tailored to the experiences of people like us, but also because my mission in what I do is to help create a world where more healthcare providers are health communicators. I think that we have a specialized body of knowledge and expertise that is not only useful in direct patient care settings, but is also really important for public health and health education. And so my goal is to have more people who are able to take that expertise and communicate it in a written fashion in engaging and conversational ways for the general public. Now, one of the advantages that we as healthcare providers have is that while there is sure general information that's out there about medical conditions, medications, etc., we also have the benefit of having a deeper level of expertise and experience in lots of different areas. And so that being the advantage that we have, it's really important for the work that you produce to be reflective of that deeper expertise. Meaning, if I am writing a blog post about high blood pressure medications, and maybe I'm comparing two of them. If I'm writing that type of blog post, I I don't want to give an example. Just let's use this broad example. If I'm writing that blog post and I type that into chat GPT, like I type in a prompt that says, you're a health content writer, write a blog post comparing medication A and medication B for the treatment of hypertension. And ChatGPT is going to spit out a blog post. And it's probably going to sound pretty decent because ChatGPT is a decent writer. Like it's a decent writer, can't lie. Um, that being said, in this new environment where lots of people have access to these tools, pretty much anyone who wants access to it has access to it. We as healthcare providers should be going a step further, should have already been doing this, but now especially need to be going a step further to make sure that the materials we are producing, the materials you are producing, are not basic. They incorporate your individual expertise. They incorporate your medical experience. They incorporate your perspectives as a clinician, because that is what is not as reproducible or producible by a generative AI tool. That is what's going to set you apart from that type of basic AI tool, or from someone who possibly is a health content writer but doesn't have that clinical background or doesn't have that expertise. So making sure that as you're laying the foundation and you're practicing and you're building up your body of work, making sure that that body of work is reflective of your expertise as a medical professional is going to be very advantageous for you, and is going to help people proactively seek you out because they are looking for that deeper level of expertise. People are going to need to differentiate themselves. Both freelancers and companies are going to need to differentiate the content that they're creating to make it be more valuable in this new space where generative AI can produce a lot of what a traditional content writer might have been able to produce previously before generative AI. So, important thing to keep in mind. And I'm done talking about AI for the rest of this Health Writing Wednesday. I think this might be next Health Writing Wednesday's topic. So, stay tuned. Okay, the last part of laying the foundation that I want to mention is getting comfortable. I'm going to change what I wrote a little bit. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, period. The process of becoming a health content writer for someone who's new to the space, it is not for the faint of heart. It is not easy. It is not, it is relatively simple in that there are certain steps that you need to follow, and if you follow these steps, then you will see success. However, there are challenges, right, with those steps, and a lot of those challenges are mental, personal, emotional. They're not the practical, tangible challenges, right? Like you can learn all the stuff, you can choose the niche, you can write, you can practice. Those are all tangible action items. But when it comes to the uncertainty and the discomfort, if there are any current freelancers and specifically freelance health content writers who are listening in, just leave a comment with some of the emotions that you have had to go through, to deal with, to experience in your own journey in becoming a freelance health content writer. If there are any health professionals, health writers, students listening in, current or past, feel free to drop yours as well. There's a lot of stuff, y'all, that you have to get comfortable with feeling and still pushing through. The reason that I am talking about this as an important part of laying the foundation is because, again, build it and they will come doesn't apply to you. You have to put in a lot of work up front in order to get to the point where people are reaching out to you for work. Usually, now there are exceptions, but usually to get consistent incoming leads, you have to put in a lot of work. And a lot of the work that you have to put in requires you to do things that you won't necessarily feel that excited about. If you are someone who is like always behind the scenes, never in front of the proverbial camera, not the literal camera, but never putting yourself out there like that, not really talking to new people, not really posting on LinkedIn because you don't want to seem like you're talking about yourself. These are all things that you have to get over if you are going to find success as a health content writer. Because again, how are people going to know? How will people know that you have something to offer if you're not letting them know that you have something to offer? And that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. It was uncomfortable for me years ago when I started freelancing. It was so uncomfortable. I could have never I used to do early on, I would do Facebook lives instead of, I wasn't on, well, LinkedIn didn't have live at that point. So I was doing Facebook lives. I was downloading the video and I was uploading a clip of the video on LinkedIn because I think there was like a 5-minute maximum. So I've been doing this for a long time. So all these years ago when I was doing the Facebook lives, I would be terrified. It would take me days to get up the courage to press record on the camera. And then when I did, well, before I press record, I would have to write out the full script. I don't mean notes like I occasionally have now. I mean word for word, what am I going to say? Like I'm writing a speech. I would have to write out the full script. I would have to practice the full script like 3 or 4 times just to make sure I was good. And then I would sweat through the entire Facebook Live because I was so uncomfortable. It wasn't that I didn't know what I was talking about. It was that I was so uncomfortable with the process. But I knew, because I was working with a coach at that time, and all great coaches work with coaches. So keep that in mind as you're, looking into different programs and learning opportunities. See if your coach has a coach, because that's important. But what I knew from my coach was that if I did not take the step of pressing go live, record, or whatever it was, and doing the thing, I would never reach the goals that I had set for myself at the beginning of that program. There was no way to get to point Z without going through points B, C, D, E, F, etc. There was no way around it. No way around it. And when we're talking about this in the context of health content writing, there are certain things that there's no way around. There's no way around having to put yourself out there if you want to eventually get to the point where people are coming to you for work. So you have to get uncomfortable with having, professional conversations, leading calls, and making contact with prospects you want to work with. You have to get comfortable with talking about what you do, at least occasionally, on public platforms, like whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever you choose to use. You have to get comfortable being vocal about what you offer. You have to get comfortable building relationships with peers, with other writers who might know of opportunities, or with leaders at companies that you maybe want to write for one day. All of these things that make you uncomfortable, you have to get comfortable with, or you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable while you're doing it anyway. You don't have to feel good about it, but you do have to do it. And I know it sounds tough. And it's not, I don't think that sometimes I worry if I worry that I'm not the most, motivational for the people who need a specific type of motivation. But my type of motivation is realistic motivation. That's where I come from. So you might not feel good about it, and that's fine. You don't have to. Your feelings are valid, but you do have to consider whether this is something that you want, whether this is a goal you want to reach. And if it is, you have to either get comfortable with the things that are making you uncomfortable, or you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable while you're doing the things that make you uncomfortable. And that's that on that. That's laying the foundation. Those are the 4 things that you need to do. Learn about health content writing in the context of marketing and digital marketing. You have to choose a niche and specialize in that niche and position yourself within that niche. You have to practice and have a body of work that you can be proud of, and you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in certain settings. Now, I will also add that showing up is, I would say, maybe a little bit more than half the battle. Because the showing up, especially when that happens in the context of discomfort, that is important, that is meaningful, that is significant, and you should be proud of yourself in the ways that you are able to show up. The reason I say show up is a little bit more than half the battle is because, again, sometimes there are exceptions to this rule, right? Sometimes there are things that happen that are maybe a little outside of what you would have expected, but it's almost like a little gift for showing up and doing what you needed to do. Like, this wasn't supposed to happen like this, or maybe it wasn't likely for this to happen this way, but because you showed up and you put your best foot forward, the universe is like, here's a little gift, here's a little blessing. And so I think about, for example, to give you a concrete example, there was a student in one of my first cohorts of health professionals to health writers. I started this back in March 2021, so this would have been sometime in that time period. And she had gotten to the point where she had completed the portfolio that she built in the program, and she was beginning to share the portfolio externally. She shared her first portfolio piece. She was so nervous. She was so nervous, y'all. She was so nervous. If she's listening, she knows who she is because she was so nervous. Hey, girl, hey. She was so nervous, but she published it anyway. And one of the first comments, by the time I saw the post, a couple of people had commented on it. And one of the first comments I saw was someone who was looking for a subcontractor. She was looking for subcontractor support, meaning she was a freelancer and she had a whole lot of work and she needed a subcontractor to help her with some of the freelance work that she had. And that was one of the first comments on my students' portfolio posts. And they ended up connecting, and they ended up signing a contract to work together within like the next couple of weeks. That is an example of how showing up can invite these little small miracles, small blessings, whatever you want to call them. Because again, it's not normal to have inbound leads coming to you in a large amount as a new freelancer, but it can happen. It can't happen though if you're not putting yourself in the position for it to happen. So showing up is a really important portion of the battle. Most of the things we talked about up until now sound pretty cut and dry, relatively simple. Maybe everything except that last point of being uncomfortable with being comfortable with being uncomfortable. But I also want to talk about some of the muddier stuff when it comes to freelance health content writing that people don't talk about, and freelancing in general, but we're talking about freelance health content writing. I want to talk about some of the muddier stuff because this is also important in laying the foundation to get people to come to you. It is important to execute. If you have a textbook that tells you 5 steps to take, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and you do all the preparation for all the steps, all the preparation for all the steps, all the background stuff for all the steps, but then it comes time to execute on the steps. If you don't execute on the steps, having learned the steps is not going to do you any good because you're not ever going to actually put all of that knowledge, all of those skills together into something that is tangible and can be of benefit to someone else. You can store all the knowledge in your brain that you want, but if you don't do anything with the knowledge or with the skills, it's not going to be beneficial to anyone unless your goal was just to put all the knowledge and skills in your brain and then not ever act on it, which I think for the most part, that's not typically our goal when we're trying to learn a new skill. Example, I was thinking about babies the other day. Babies, I often wonder if they get bored because they just watch people all day. But I get that everything that they're seeing is news. So I don't think they get bored. But walking in particular, babies watch people walk around them all the time, 24/7. They see people walk like all the time. That doesn't mean that the baby knows how to walk. The baby might have seen someone walk. They are storing in their brain. I'm not a brain specialist, but they're storing in their brain the information that they will need to eventually get to the point where they are learning how to walk. but they're not going to actually learn how to walk until they start to get up and try to do it. The observations, the knowledge is not going to make them walk. It's the action that is going to result from the observations and from the knowledge and from the practice that is going to allow them to learn how to walk. So if you are, in this sense, a baby who's collecting the observations, who's collecting the knowledge, who's collecting the skills, but is never putting it into action, then you're also not going to learn how to walk. And if you're not walking, that means that you're not laying the foundation that you need to establish yourself as a health content writer, as an expert in this space, as an expert in your niche, which means people are not going to come to you to seek your services because you haven't established your services, because you haven't executed on all the skills and all the knowledge that you have. So executing is really important. Being willing to mess up, being willing to look silly, being willing to fail, being willing to face rejection. These are specific examples of all the uncomfortable things that I was talking about before. Being willing to do all of those things is necessary. If you are hyper concerned about what somebody else who's actually probably not thinking about you all that much, if we're being really honest, like we tend to think people are thinking about us more than they are, that people have their own stuff to worry about, okay? And if they are thinking about you, then that's their business. That's not your business. So being willing to do things that might make you, I don't know, that might make you feel silly or like you're doing something silly. Being willing to face rejection. This is a really, really important part of laying the foundation. Rejection is a part of a freelancer's life. It's going to happen. It's probably going to happen more than often, at least in the beginning while you are still trying to establish yourself. But if you don't put yourself in the position to offer something and risk that someone else doesn't need what you're offering, then you will never put yourself in a position to offer something and be in a position where someone actually does want to receive what you're offering. They come hand in hand. You can't put yourself out there without the risk of, without being vulnerable to either of those outcomes. Both of those outcomes require the same output from you. And so that inherently makes it risky. That inherently makes you feel vulnerable because you know that, oh my gosh, if I publish this blog post and I say that I'm a health content writer and I let people know to reach out to me, then someone might reach out to me, yeah, and that'll be great, but a lot of people might not. Well, who cares if the people don't reach out to you? Oh, if I have this conversation with a prospect, you know, I listen to what they have going on. I tell them about my services and see if they want to work together. They might want to work together. That would be great, but they might not. And if they don't, then what is the worst that happened? You had a conversation with someone. You got to meet someone you didn't know before. You got to practice talking about your services. They got to hear about your services, and maybe they didn't need them. That doesn't make it personal, though. I think one of the really important parts of being willing to face rejection is separating the personal part from that rejection. When you are a freelancer, this is basically like one of my coaching sessions at this point. I'm giving y'all a lot today. When you are a freelancer, you're coming into the conversation as an equal. You should be coming into the conversation as an equal, not for someone who's begging for something. You are a person with a service. You are offering that service in exchange for typically a rate. The prospect you're talking to is in need of a service. They are looking to acquire that service in exchange for a rate. Y'all both have something that the other party wants. And so you should be coming into this conversation as an equal. And so if there's rejection involved in the conversation, then don't perceive that as a rejection of you. You're not offering yourself, you're offering your services. So maybe they don't need your services, and that's fine. That happens. Being able to think about rejection in a way that is not personal to you is going to be really important in being willing to face rejection. So looking silly, failing, rejection, all of those are things, practical examples of the things that you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with. and being willing to face those things head on so that you can lay the foundation you need to later on have clients and prospects who are coming to you. The last thing that I'll mention, this is long today. The last thing that I'll mention is being willing to be a student, being willing to start over in a particular space where you don't actually have a lot of experience or maybe any experience at all, which can be challenging, especially if you are a healthcare provider who has deep experience in the type of care that you provide. Um, Being willing to be a student and practice resilience, practice tenacity, practice perseverance. For us in particular, I think it can feel a lot like starting over when you're trying to become a health content writer, because yes, you have the knowledge and the expertise part, but you don't have usually any of the other parts, all the other things that are important. You don't know what health content writing is really, or you might think you do, but then when you start to learn about it, you realize there was a whole lot more than you thought. Any former health professionals, health writer students, I think y'all can affirm that that is the case. Um, you don't know a niche, you don't know how to write in this particular style. Usually, you don't know how to format a blog post. You don't know any of the business side of it. It's all so new, and newness can be intimidating. It can be uncomfortable. It can be exhausting. Um, but that's a part of being a new student to a new area. And so, if you are someone who's considering going into this direction, or if you are a health content writer who's looking to get more leads coming to you, you have to make sure that a part of your growth is this continuous learning and this continuous willingness to be a student. And then in that being a student, recognizing that you're going to have challenges with that, but that you want to be resilient through those challenges. You want to be strong and push through regardless of those challenges, and you want to persevere. So my bottom line point is, if you are a health content writer who wants clients to come to you rather than you having to go to clients, there's a lot of work on your part that has to happen first. And that work will take time. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of time that you have to put into your journey in order to get to the point where a prospect wants to come to you. You have to be ready for that. And then when they do, you got to provide excellent results, because you want them to continue to come to you. You want them to tell their network and tell their friends about you. Otherwise, you risk wasting opportunities because you don't have the infrastructure to support those continued opportunities. So that was a lot. I hope it was helpful. I know it was helpful for someone. Let me position it that way. I know this was helpful for someone. And if you have any key takeaways that you want to share with the group, or that you're going to be taking with you to reflect on, I would love to hear those key takeaways in the comments. Health professionals to health writers, y'all, we're full for the rest of the year. The July cohort is full. And so I've been getting a lot of messages and comments and DMs over the past week or so about joining the cohort. The cohort's full. However, it is always to your advantage to be on the wait list, because when I open enrollment for new cohorts, I open it to the wait list first. So the wait list has a couple of weeks to join before I ever open enrollment to the public. And usually the cohort is, I would say, 60 to 80% full by the time it opens to the public. So you can always comment waitlist to get on the waitlist. The accelerator is for US-based pharmacists and healthcare providers only. Students, residents, and fellows are encouraged not to apply because of the time commitment that is required. It is an intensive, guided 6-month accelerator program. It is not a self-paced DIY course. So keep that all in mind as you drop waitlists in the comments, and I'll see y'all on the next Health Writing